Hello again, everyone. Edwin Leonard back once again. In this YouTube astrological segment, I'm going to be dissertating and talking about the moon transiting the first house in a natal chart. Now, on average, the moon is going to transit a house for about 2 1/3 days on average, because that's the average duration of time that the moon is going to traverse a sign, and the average house is 30 degrees. However, if your house is a little bit smaller or a little bit larger, you're going to have it in there for a little bit less than the time that I stated. Generally, it's going to be in a house between 2 and 3 days in most instances. So anyway, people, the first thing is when you have the moon transiting your first house, I think the obvious thing is that this is more, person might be a little bit more emotional than usual, more sensitive, even if their natal chart doesn't really suggest somebody that's known for emotionality. This could be a period during the time that the moon is in the first house that it may be very hard to suppress or repress the emotions, and people can really more readily see when you're emotionally upset or something has hurt your feelings than in many other instances than ordinarily so. I mean, really, the thing about this is you could also be very sensitive to your environment at this point in time, even perhaps extraneous influences that really that generally may not always affect you. Your sensitivity can really be heightened during this period. And the thing about it is, even unintentional slights, maybe in the past where they may not have affected you, they may affect you a little bit more in this period. It could be that you're more sensitive to criticism and ridicule. There may be also where the mother, in many cases, are going to figure in one's life prominently, regardless whether one has this transit or not, but it might even be more pronounced during this period. And also, women in this person's life might figure in a little bit stronger than they ordinarily would. So, this is really, you might be more sensitive to how you appear to somebody on a first impression. There might be some, you might decide to make some small modification in your appearance during this period. So those are some things to consider as far as this transit goes. And also, you might be a little bit more impetuous and impulsive and might react in a more subjective manner, more out of emotion than you ordinarily would. And it's important during this transit to try to be objective as you can, because you're going to be so much more sensitive to things during this period than you ordinarily would. And the really you might also put some emotional energy into new beginnings in your life. And the thing about this is, in your outlook on life, it could really be more where you put a little bit more energy into that as well. The outlook on life might be more pronounced in this period as well. And the thing about when you have the moon transiting the first house, it could also mean you might be a little bit more temperamental and moody than you generally are. Even if your chart suggests somebody that's very fixed and very stable personality, you still might be more subjected to more of a mood swings during this small period that the moon does transit your first house in your natal chart. And the thing too is on this is that when you look, also the questions about yourself might come more into view at this particular time, and you might really be, it might be a little bit about evaluating yourself a little bit. You might be it might be more things connected with your physical body, and really, and how really you appear to other people. And the thing about this is you might be a little bit more egocentric, and not to be harsh, but maybe a little bit more self-centered during this period than you are ordinarily. Now, the first house in a chart corresponds with the zodiac sign Aries, so it could be where you might show a little bit more this bravery, this courage with your responses to others, your reactions during this period than you ordinarily would. You might come across as a little bit more abrupt with like what you say. So those are some things to consider during this transit, during this period. Well, anyway, it's also important to look at the sign that the moon is transiting when it's transiting the first house, as this could flavor this transit. Now, let's say that the moon is in Gemini during either the whole or majority of the period it's transiting the first house. This could be something where the feelings might be conveyed, where maybe you're verbalizing your emotions very strongly, and you might be very more loquacious during this period and talking about your feelings very strongly and really talking about them extensively, and maybe a little bit more excitable during this period, as Gemini is a sign that can be like that. Now, also, let's say, for example, that the moon is transiting Pisces in your first house for either the majority or the whole period that it's making this transit. Well, you might be, Pisces being a water sign, this could add to the sensitivity, as Pisces is a sign that can be exceptionally sensitive, and the emotions of Pisces can sometimes be all-encompassing, I think, and you might be more impressionable to others' moods during this time, and others' moods and their emotions. So it's something to look at if the moon is in Pisces for either the majority or the whole period it's transiting your first house. So another thing to look at as far as this transit goes, the aspects that it makes to points and planets in your natal chart. Now, let's say, for example, that the transiting moon in your first house is making a square or inconjunct or opposition to your natal Uranus. This could indicate perhaps some kind of maybe some technical dilemmas during this time, maybe, for example, electronics or computers. Something that comes about very unanticipated or unexpectedly, which might cause some emotional exasperation. Now, another example could be, let's say, for example, that the transiting moon in the first house makes a conjunction to your natal moon in your first house. It's going to do that for me maybe in about a week or so. Well, this could really intensify emotionality and give greater sensitivity toward your emotional needs for that small period that it makes that conjunction. So anyway, people, that'll conclude this YouTube astrological segment for the moon transiting the first house in a natal chart. And stay tuned next time, where I'll be dissertating and talking about the moon transiting the second house in a natal chart. Two things I want to get with you on before I head out. Firstly, the stars may impel but do not compel. And secondly, never isolate any single astrological element, aspect, planetary placement, position, configuration, influence, or what have you, and make an analysis of a person, astrologically speaking, based on this alone. Because astrologically speaking, the person is the sum of all their components in their natal chart, and not just one. Until next time, people, stay well.